Hi everybody, it's Jess, your go-to YouTube dance commentator, and we are here taking a look at round one, the wide views for IDL Seoul. Round two is going to be in a separate video, but if you want to see all of it in real time as I review it, it's going to be on Patreon first, then follow a schedule on YouTube and on Instagram and on TikTok and things of the like. This is going to be great. I'm looking forward to seeing these in the wide views, especially the ones that were kind of really tricky to figure out some of those categories. It's going to be fun. All will be revealed. Let's go ahead and get started. The first matchup is going to be GRV versus Royal Family. Watch through. Always do a watch through first, and then we're going to look at the categories. And next is Royal.
I am the old nigga. I'm the fastest growing bitch on your absolute. Yeah, hey, yeah. Demons in my pockets, demons.
Okay, let's talk about GRV. So the overall notes, or the overall, let's say, areas that we saw that they did pretty well. I do believe, if I'm remembering correctly, both Royal and GRV scored the same on musicality. Seeing the wide cams, that absolutely makes sense because of the types of tracks that we have, how we're approaching them, whether it's hitting the predictable sounds. I would also even go so far as to say the transitions on both teams had more of a simplistic approach or a predictable approach on the timing that we're hearing on the track. We were kind of resonating on that. And I think that would be a big indicator of our musicality environmentally or complementary choreography being affected. I think that's going to be something that gets brought up pretty often, not just with GRV, but with a lot of our teams of the series, is the transitions, specifically getting in and on and off of stage, and the environmental complementary dancers, because that helps fill up your stage, but how is that going to be costing you points? We're going to talk about it. So let me see. Yeah, musicality, that was their area, but I believe they did not score as high in any other category. Does that mean that they did the other categories poorly? I would say if you're looking at it in terms of Royal Family had more projection, they had more stamina being presented. Just because Royal Family beat them in every single category doesn't necessarily mean that they were poor in all of them, right? I would say they had some complex moments. They absolutely did. I would say stylistic athleticism, they had some really nice pockets of moments. I think it was, if his name, hopefully say his name right, we'll see his number later, Ethan's section, it was a bit of a smaller group where they dropped to the floor, probably one of the best sections of it, and you could hear the crowd response. We'll talk about why I personally think that was a very strong section. The stamina went up and down, and I would say it was the most, you could see it spike. It was so impressionable, the spikes happening throughout the routine. Also, I was hearing that we are missing a member of GRV. Is it River? I don't know if River is supposed to be in this. I need to count before we officially start to make sure that we only have 19. That is going to be a deduction. That is a straight up deduction if you do not have everybody on stage. Missing lineup people. 3 points per dancer missing. Remember, in round 2, we were able to see the itemized, whether there was a deduction or not, and the itemized scores. In these first round matchups, you do not get to see that. So there's a very high chance they received a 3-point deduction, which will absolutely factor into their overall score, right? But we're going to double check that before we actually get started. And I do think they're projection in their communication, just like their stamina you can see when we were kind of coasting versus whenever we were really giving that punch or we were projecting. It does come off of the familiarity of the framework of GRV, and we'll touch on that when we get to that section. Hopefully I'll remember to touch on it, but I'm going to do some counting here. Well, I'm going to, do some counting on my end, and then we will get started. Okay, I have counted. If I know how to count on my end, I do count 19. They received a deduction, so that's already working against you if you have a tight matchup. So I would want to see, I don't think the score sheets are released at the time of me recording this. C'est la vie. We'll probably have a discussion in the comments here. Okay. So we're going to do a little zoom through to the beginning. I enjoyed. I like the levels. I like the rotation happening there with our content. You have your feature. He's the only one directionally facing front. Everybody else is facing back. But notice that everybody is showcasing complementary choreography with each other. Some complexity, which is nice. And I like how we do that. Prung, prung, prung. Beautiful usage of our music, really capturing that sound, whether or not you've heard the song before. These groups, they remix the tracks, and that can really help in introducing a new sound or a new envelope of the new soundscape that can exist within the respective track that can work for or against you depending on how you receive the remix, right? I think this is original so far, but I like that we have the head create a really nice polyrhythmic intention where you have this legato energy transfer to hit on the piano, moving through, but also having the clarity of those more of those punctuated parts of that piano as well. So I like that section is nice. And then we can create some tension to build it back in. They drop, they come back up. Now that right there, that is a really nice back to front kind of reset up. It's not quite a like royal call out or dig, but if you think the Rihanna set that they did, they had people, come up from the back. So that was a fun ripple that they started in their set. Here we go. They bring it out, they punch it, they clap it. So I like that we syncopate it up. So I want you to take note of this beginning segment. With the segment, you're seeing there's a lot of isolations, a lot of travel ups with some punctuation or accents happening with the shoulders, extremities alike. The claps are nice. So we are complex. Drop down is cool. And then we end up doing a switch off with the knees, and then we send it up, travel it down. So we have some levels. The levels are not quite as distinct. Yes, we have a shaky camera, but we should be able to pick up on most things regardless of that. It doesn't look like we have a lot of staging moments, which can affect that score a lot. I think that was a big impact to them, was their lack of staging or not innovation, because it's a creativity criteria, but the actual usage of levels, I think, is something that it would be a big area of opportunity here, right? So you have your complementary choreography right here is what that's considered, because this is your focal point. Normally when you see more complex, where the majority of the individuals doing more complex things, and then you see people do simple, then that's going to be something you're going to be drawn towards. But if you see everybody and their mama doing complex things with one person being super still, that's going to be your feature, and that's a different, same textbook example, but just the opposite impression psychologically of how we cater to it. So this is going to be what we focus on. So this is nice. I don't mind it. Could we have some dynamic moments of opposition, some mirroring to supplement for the simplicity of the complementary choreography? Yes. I believe Mark Tolan, shout out to him, he did an interview with Arnell, and I believe he even talked about it on the live stream with Jarrell on Twitch. Essentially, that Arnell had a conversation with Mark on camera, right? There was an interview, Tolan Talks, and they talked about complementary choreography or a heavy usage of solos. I do believe we're going to touch on that later. Those kind of components are going to really affect your overall score of complexity, and this, I would say, is a great example of that. The punch is nice. They bring it back in with a drop down. They hinge it around. I like that they build up the energy and build up the arms on that with the toss is fun. A lot of unison. You're asking people to kind of hold you accountable. It's a form of accountability to the intensity that you're bringing on those respective sections. If you're choosing to bring that type of segment structure again, you have to match it just as strongly. And I think that's going to be a component that really drops the projection and communication of GRV specifically, are those things. Drop down with a pull out on the A. I like the A, they turn it through. So they do a knee slide, and I like the arm, so that was really nice staging, right? So I like the subtlety of that, is fun. But we also don't have the subtlety really standing out in that center because there is a similar subtlety being repackaged in these environmental complementary dancers. I would say the spacing could be a smidgen improved. It looks pretty compact here, but a little bit more spread out, more diagonal based. This is a very big stage. It can show a lot of positives and a lot of negatives in your staging. And it also, I would say, my group over here on the stage right side is a little bit closer than the group on stage left. Could it be a blocking, recalibration? There's always that. They send it, rotate it up, that ball changed, so they go off stage, so now they've joined themselves there into the group. The spacing you can still see is a bit too ambiguous. So now this is honestly a great example. This is a textbook example of this is a combo structured dance, right? Meaning that it gives the impression that we had a few choreographers come up with combos, and then we have groupings of combos. That can be very risky when you choose to do that in a competition structure like this, because it's going to open up a lot of areas of opportunity, which we're taking advantage of in Royal Family on the criteria list in the transitions, because the transitions are going to be a little bit more simple because they're easier to clock. Also, with your combos, when you don't supplement in staging, it's going to come across not redundant, but it can plateau in energy output. You're reliant too much on creativity for the content itself in order to make it something that maintains captivation, it maintains that complexity, it maintains, you're really risking it on your cleanliness too, because if you have a really heavy unison content being presented, you're only asking your judges to look at it with a fine-tooth comb, not just those that you want them to look at, but everybody and their mama. So the corners, specifically people in that second to third line, you can't hide anybody. Especially if the judges are this level, like where we are, you really can't hide anybody. Just like in the New York series, I loved how high they were, because nothing can be not seen from that vantage point. So we have the heads, break it through. So notice that the intensity is very similar here, even though we have a very prominent timbre going in. And also this move here, I even have it on my board, just make sure I get the name right. I think this is if it's with the points, not the Nox. Nox is the Daikiwe to Betsa is here. Notice is more of a basic accent used of this move versus using it to hybridize it or variant it. And then they bring it in, they have the crown, and they said crowns are losers. Was that as much of a dig as we were going? I'd say the intensity is not matching. And then we have the hip accent, and we travel it, bit simple on the transition, round off, and then we end up go to the ground. Now, with this, it looks like a fall, a crash. I would probably still consider that in real time. However, you remember the trend, Anana Enanu Bugatti, you're on the ground, right? So I would say if number 33 salvaged it, I would say he absolutely salvaged it, because he ended up doing that position. That right there. Like, I think we were supposed to do that. Bugatti. But we made the most of that. Is that the only reason why we lost? No. I would say we were already setting ourselves up at a huge deficit by not having 20 people. Jam Republic absolutely empathizes with that. They had to deal with that issue in New York. Do I think that could have affected the overall morale or the synergy of the group? Yes. I don't want to discredit when you don't have your full roster there. That can absolutely affect your projection on stage, whether or not you're aware of it. So that could be a huge component as to why the energy was lower. I don't know GRV. I don't know any of the teams. I only go off of what I'm given. And if you're looking at it from how a judge would look at it, that doesn't matter, right? Like, I can't be like, oh, their morale is down, I'm going to cut him some slack because we're missing a member. No. Just because of what I'm aware of leading into doing a review doesn't inherently mean that affects the scores inherently. It may affect the fan vote, right? Or it may affect communication or help me understand what they are communicating more, but that's not going to affect every single category we look at. That is not, number 33, that is not affecting the entire score. Like, that's not even a deduction. That's just probably going to lower your creativity, and it's going to affect projection, which is what I believe ended up happening. Arms go high, low. Then we have the Bugatti, and I like how creative that was. It's cute, but we are a bit simple in this section. I would say the middle section would be the weakest. Arm swings, we're fine, because this entire section we're entertaining very similar pockets and postures. Just because Royal Family has been given the note throughout the series that they have to work on their complexity doesn't mean for the sake of a dig, and I'm not saying they're doing this for the sake of a dig, it's not advised to match the exact note that another team is given that they need to fix unless you're ready to own it. So that's kind of an unfortunate thing here, where our pocket of timing, we're complex more here. The toss with the broad down, I like the glide around, but our staging, it's a lot of area of opportunity in this section. With the pullback is nice. With the drop down, I like the air time was cool. But we're back to combos. We just do a switch off in our transitions with a drop down. And it looks like instead of the crown, we're just, we're being teasy about it. Not quite, it's a bit ambiguous. Not quite clear there. Rotating it through. So we have the ponies, once again, a bit simple there. So just got to be very mindful of that. The switch off through. So we have our contents pretty okay. This section though, notice though, the type of phrases and sequences that we're seeing in the content doesn't have the same kind of punch or accent or punctuation that they were doing in the beginning. GRV has a fingerprint style. We know this. I believe it was Ethan in the bumper video saying, we're serving GRV on a silver platter. So it was expectant to expect a GRV structured routine. I'm going to give the same, perspective that I gave about anytime we see Brotherhood and they have more of a familiarized routine that they bring, which I believe in round one's a good example. We're going to get to that. With GRV specifically, the same note applies, even though it's really familiar and it may not be as, captivating to the individual. I personally think that this can still compete. It's just not able to compete against who they were competing against when they're both going up against a criteria list, right? So you have to remember, there's a lot of areas of opportunity. Sure, in comparison to a lot of strengths they were able to show in other series, they didn't show here. That doesn't negate the fact that, they're still showcasing a routine that has competitive qualities about it. They're just not as competitive as they were before. It's not a bad thing. It's just something to just have on your radar. Bit too simple on that. And all this here, this is a fantastic example of what I had mentioned on very, very, very regressed in the projection for that sequence. It's still complex, but the projection was off. So that's why those two categories would probably be affected differently. So then we have the pull, they drop it down, they rotate around transitions, they do these slides, and that's a basket run. I would clock that area of opportunity for transitions. So this section here, I would say, is probably one of the strongest sections on stylistic athleticism and complexity, in authenticity. I like the switch off there with the rotation around. Absolutely love this section. Staging opportunities, sure, but I would say when it comes to the content, this absolutely brought the energy back up. I would say through the content itself, one of the strongest combos that we saw. They drop down and people join back in. So we do a little knockback, is fun. And then they do a little ball change. And then we have good tension, take the arms high, low. And then from there, we hop up. The transition into this was fine. This dig, it's really hard to match. If you're going to choose to do a call out, I don't mind the call out. Do I think it helped them? With everything else going into this, no. I don't think it helped as much as what the intention was, right? Do we know any background information on, if it was somebody else doing it, or if they were doing it and we just felt awkward getting into it, or if this was how we do it? That's fine, but did they take ownership of it the way that it was originally done? No. That's a really tricky thing when you choose to call out, is, are you going to do it better than whoever did it before? That was really hard to beat the type of tension and energy output that was expressed in the original from Sydney. And their staging is a bit off here as well. And we end up doing some brushes across on it, sending it through, and then we go turn up, and then we move forward. The accent, high, low, and then our spacing's a bit off here, the punches, and then arms send around. And then we end up doing more isolated, syncopated upper body, not the same kind of punch or accent that they did earlier. More than they did in the middle section, but the high-low was fun. It was just basic add-on. The toss arounds into your columns, but we didn't quite land in that column to really appreciate in our staging point. Number 77 absolutely helped in finishing out the projection by having 77 in front with this sequence. However, is 77 standing out too much? The morale has been brought up. They're not standing out too much. I think they helped properly. The way that whenever we get to 1 mil, I think Baek Young really helped in their respective routines, but we'll touch on that when we get there. The knockout is fun, but not everybody's matching the same intensity as number 77. So that's always the risk you run. But the overall performance, notice how we have more punctuation. Even though we had those go-to timbres, the GRV showcased, it was fine. Like, in general, I don't want them to feel super discouraged by this. It is what it is. I have no idea the background or the back end on how these teams are feeling. They have a lot. There's a lot that all these teams are having to prep for going into LA in the championship. So I'm hopeful that everything's okay. I hope that they're able to feel, not feel super discouraged, especially about that flip. You guys, I think you guys are fine, honestly. Just take it a day at a time. All right, we're going to talk about Royal. So, Royal, there was a lot of areas of opportunity that GRV gave that Royal took advantage of. And I think going second, really helps. So we start with the crowns up, the hinge around, looks like we're sniping it off. We have nice staging with levels. We have subtlety going in. Then we accent out. Their song, you notice how our camera is shaking as much as it is? I think a huge component when you have a song that's really bass heavy is that it's going to resonate and feeling in the audience. And also your judges are going to be feeling it. So are you going to match that in intensity? That's really hard to do, right? When you choose a song that ends up reverbing in the space like that. Sometimes you can't control that until you're there and you're like, wow, that's a lot. But they match the intensity. Especially in this beginning. We have a lot of complexity. Notice that we have multiple pockets of timing being represented. What are pockets of timing? It's going to be, people bouncing on the and counts, people bouncing on whole counts, people bouncing on, every other count. All of those are going to resonate on your track differently, which can affect your complexity if you have more simpler pockets of timing, which is what I referenced to GRV. We were kind of walking that line a little too much. And you supplement accordingly to help in your staging and to help in your creativity and to help with your projection and communication, just off the top. So the accents with the knocks are fun. So I like the drop down. I like the breath is cool. The ball changes. And notice how we have a bit of it's a pretty athletic thing to do with our partnering where we use that as a transition. And also we have levels showcase. And then you have more features going through, not just through the front, but through diagonals. There's a lot that's ingrained and threaded. It's not just a combo. You have a lot of, a lot of layers, like a crepe, right? Crepe cake. It's just like a way, or a tiramisu or something like that, where you can separate, but it tastes way better all together is kind of the point. It's like a little sushi. I don't know. So I like the little sways happening there. We have more levels even there. The knock, we have the bases. I wonder if we added more bases to our set because you're up against a team like GRV who really takes advantage of heavy bases or syncopated bases. So we end up knocking, we rotate it through. I like the accent with the hands. The tap downs are cool. I love that flat. It was nice and full, more individualized, so that would affect your cleanliness, but I think that was really fun. But I like the taps on this, but notice is a bit of a simpler transition off where they're hitting a movement, Simple doesn't mean easy, so we're not talking about complexity in terms of difficulty. We're talking about complexity in terms of how multiplanar is the move, and also how much do you choose to repeat it in a given phrase, right? So I would say in the context of our transitions, both teams, I would say areas of opportunity, specifically with Royal. And I just realized too that I just went straight in to the Royal set. Oh my goodness. So sorry. Let's talk about what you did very well. I mean, you ended up taking 8. No, like 8 out of the 10, which means it was musicality and there was something else that you guys scored similarly on with GRV. Your stamina, I would say, absolutely worked well in your favor from top to bottom. It was consistent, which is really tricky to do with the type of track that you have. For projection communication, absolutely every single thing that you guys chose to do in your call outs landed, which means proper communication. You punctuated everything to where there was no run on sentences in terms of what you were trying to get across. Things worked very well in your favor. I would say there were more discrepancies in the spacing, which Royal Family is that team that really thrives and knows how to work through the spacing, but most teams I think struggled on spacing, and it could be because of the calibration of the type of stage that we have, because it's so deep. I would say area of opportunity too would be cleanliness. We do have a lot of individuality in some of our segments, which is cool, but because we don't have that super crisp, clean effect, which can come down to the type of lower body costuming, that can affect the range of the garment, which will affect the cleanliness. I remember touching on that in other circuits. That's a really big one, is your garments in particular. But I like that you used your garment in both rounds. I thought that was really cool. Creativity, movements, concepts, and transitions. I would say both teams have that area. I think the usage of the GRV callouts was a creative element, how you chose to put it in your set, but you used staging to do that, which I thought was really nice. We created a lot of levels and a lot of layers, so I would say that's the strength you guys had in this particular round, was your usage of staging. For sure. In the area of opportunity, of course, complexity of choreography, you guys are using staging to do it very similarly to 1 million. But I would say that both of you guys beefing up the actual content, and that right there will help your musicality. Beefing up the content, but trying not to sacrifice your staging at the same time. Anyway, from there, the punch throughs are fun. Send it through, and then we have a little syncopation going. Or a little like we did a network, and then we send it around. Yeah, so this section, say, was not the cleanest, which whenever you're dealing with a style like this, you have to kind of pick your battles, right? Where am I going to be squeaky clean and drop in our authenticity, or are we going to try to really look like we're authentically approaching it the way that we can, and we're going to drop that cleanliness score? Crump works the same way. I know we touched on that exact point in the last series, so we'll move on from there. So we have our arms, sending it up and away. The bring forward through is fun. I'll let that little eagle. Love it. We did a little leapfrog. I thought that was a fun transition. Instead of just moving to the side, just leapfrog over the person. That's great. So we send it around, then we have our male dancers going through, but notice that our transition off entertain a similar, pocket of timing that we saw earlier on. It was just a different sequence of movements. But notice that it's the timing itself is a bit simpler. I know part of it could be you don't want the transition to take away from the focal point, but it is taking away from your points by not finding a middle ground on it. I like the little moment out of that with a little fanning of our flannel. To get painted with a hip. I thought that was very fun, and because the fact is we saw GRV do it literally in the last one. Do we use the GRV set? This is an interesting thought. Do we use the GRV set to justify our scoring for Royal Family? No. Because remember, it's not a comparison game. It can be for us audience folk, but for the judges, they're going up against a criteria list, right? It's not like D-League. So if you watch D-League with me, the judge is choosing a side, but they're only judging one category with 3 subcategories depending on which one they're doing. We can get into that when we cover D-League later in a couple months. But point being, here, they're going up against the 10-part criteria list that the judges are looking at. That's all they're looking at. They're not looking at, low-key forget the GRV set because they're looking at royal family right here, right? So that's why it's just for us audience people, it's fun to see them do that hip accent because we saw GRV do it as a call out to royal, but royal's like, we have everybody doing it, not just one person, right? So quantity, I think, helped more in this round for royal family compared to their second round where we had one of the members, I think it was number 15. He's really fun. I like him as a feature. It was a bit prolonged there, but we'll get to the round twos when we get to the round twos. The clap's fun. And I like the tap, tap. Notice that. Tap, tap, tap. It was syncopated with a drop down. That was fun. We walk on stage. Notice it's a simple timing, but I like the projection of it. I like the lack of basket runs. Thank you for that. I would say spacing's a little bit off over on stage. Yeah. Depending on what's about to happen will determine whether or not which side's going to be a little bit better on the spacing. Okay. Hold on. Let me see. So we bring it through, and then you have that, the clap. Golly, their bass is basing. Okay, so the clap is fun that we caught it, but notice it's a simple pocket of timing and transition off. That's going to affect your criteria. So I would say they look a little too far out. They look about in line. So notice that we had it set up where each person was dedicated to a line, and then here it's a line in the middle and the line. So that I would say is just a staging discrepancy where it's either we talked about it and we forgot, or we didn't talk about it and we just made an educated guess is what this looks like here. It happens. Sometimes you don't have time. Every single team has a timer to go through, to go through their sets on stage. So that I do see from, the stories, like Instagram stories and things like that. But I love how, what is it? Nuanced and natural Isla looks doing this. She is such a good feature for this, but she's also matching everybody else, and we have levels. The staging absolutely worked in their favor for this, because yes, she's a feature. Notice the less is more while they're doing the most on the side. That is a really good example of showcasing a feature there, but not compromising your complexity too much. So we have more syncopation in the chest whenever they were dropped in more of a pulse like accent down. Yeah, staging, I would say, no, not staging, spacing can absolutely improve in this particular section. Now notice here our guys coming on stage. They are hitting the hook, that's really nice. Pocket of timing, very basic. And we've seen it about 3 times now. Not the move, but the timing, right? So we have the accent with the head rotation. That movement there, I would consider that a fingerprint of royal. Not quite the most creative, I would say. And this is something I'm probably going to say with every team. There isn't really a set that I've seen in the series or in a lot of the series where it's inherently creative in content. It's in other things. There's a refreshment to it, but when it comes to original, right? So I'm not going to look at these with a sense of originality. It's in a sense of refreshment because that is part of the criteria list. So the tap tap is fun. So that matches the syncopation that we saw going in with our guys, right? So I like the hop on that. That's really fun. That's athletic, right? So that helps instead of just keeping it where it is. We drop it down, and then we go through the legs. I like the transitions that we're not going around, we're going through. And we're using levels to do that. I think that's sensible. I think that's smart. This is probably one of the smartest sets Royal did this series, like genuinely. So we end up accenting, and then we have some subtlety going with the hips. The pull up. Could our ladies have stayed on stage? Possibly. They could have helped with complementary choreography, but always the risk gets run when you have people stay on stage. How are they contributing to the set? Everything gets measured on stage, not just the part where you want us to see, right? Let's travel around. So I like that we have, deviation of levels is cool. Then we drop it down. Spicy work, right? We acting grown here. I would say some of our choices were a little bit teeter-totter depending on the individual, so that would affect your the cleanliness of the levels that you're showcasing. Woo. The little slap down, the little whip sound, accenting through. So now we're messing with, I would say spacing could absolutely improve here. And I think part of the reason why we have that discrepancy is quite simply that stage is really, really long. And we got to get to our spot fast. That's what that looks like right there. So we broke from the pack a bit. Yeah, totally makes sense. Because they got to get to their spot fast. And then we go to the demons set. Now, a lot of people, I did not remember this, that Royal used this track at WDCC. I think it was what, 2024? Is that what you guys had mentioned? I don't know if I watched that one because I watched 2025 whenever they won. Was it then? Anyway, not important. What's important is, for me, there was a theory back whenever GRV used this track against Brotherhood. The theory was that the Demons set was meant for Royal. Knowing that Royal used this track at WDCC, I would kind of confirm that, because also, if you didn't, there's a lot of things that were cited from the Demon set that GRV pulled that Royal did here, and it looked like it was made for them. So I would say that it was unfortunate how GRV used that set for Brotherhood. I understood because of the Doja Cat is what I think why we made that switch. But I think it was meant for Royal, and Royal was able to take it and say, "We'll take this back now." Right? So when it comes to the callouts, I like the apps now with the swipe was cool. Staging, it's fine with the columns. I like the break-offs. It looks very combative. This reminds me, if you've ever watched the Street Woman Fighter, Street World Fighter, specifically AG Squad. Yes, I know AG Squad has more OG Royal family members. Some of them have been helping in the creative direction or in the choreography pulls of Royal for the season, which is why I feel like it's safer to say. I don't know who helps with the choreography of this, but I will say that we have, what's the word? That gave very mega near the tail end, just this like animalistic side that we saw from AG Squad. So that's what that reminded me of in a fun way. And that's not going to be the only time I talk about the mega crews of the Street Fighter franchise. Specifically in round 2, we see it from Brotherhood, and also we have a little bit of nuance happening from 1 mil. But Brotherhood, I think, absolutely pulled from it. Anyway, so we have the arm swings with the pulse on it. It's cool. Look at the levels. That absolutely provided so much to take in, helped saturate the sound. And then we have our feature at the top, the lean away. The grab is cool. They punch it out. They add a syncopation in between to help with their complexity. The pulse is cool, so we have our levels. So it is simpler in content, but our staging is supplemented, right? So if you wanted to up your complexity, that can make it look even more full, more captivating, and it'll help your criteria. I understand we're picking and choosing what categories to focus on. Projection, communication, stamina. And by doing those, a lot of times you sacrifice complexity for the sake of projecting your point. That's something I've touched on with Royal many times before. That's the route that we're choosing to go. But you can see the effort in the syncopation or in the interruptions or in how complex we're trying to go with the respective set, that kind of stuff, right? So we bring it out in. And then we end up rotating it around. So then we rotate it. Notice the grab. Part of that was oh my God, save me, because they're about to take you out, right? That's what that looked like. But then they're about to go, pop it. And they're like, oh no, right? It's funny that I'm using that kind of voice on this. So then we end up knocking a lot of levels here. And then we end up doing a kip up. That landed. Then this move right here. The sway, that's a GRV call out there in the sways. Is it okay for an IDL judge to understand clock that and see that as a creative reference point and how they're pulling from it and doing it successfully? I would say yes, because it's specific to the IDL circuit. If they were pulling something that GRV did at Body Rock or at Vibe or at something 15 years ago, then it's okay for a judge to not clock that, right? And once again, it is okay for a judge to not look at that, like to look at that and not see the GRV reference. For the audience, we do. But it makes more sense for a judge to factor this in to the creative side compared to having to cite something from 10 years ago. A judge is not responsible for that, and that's okay, right? And then accenting through. The swing around is nice. The redirections are cool there in the staging. They drop it low. Then we have it very quick on the dun 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 dun. That was a cannon. not quite readable in the beginning, but I was able to see the idea of the dynamic enough, but it wasn't super clean and readable. So that's going to affect a lot of categories that way. They bring it through. That was so stable. I love the airtime. Very stable. And I love that it wasn't just one person. You had 3 people going, huzzah, over everyone. That's going to help in your athleticism. And there's your notable viral bag with the grab and the arm being sent up. And then we have the sways happening through, and then we knock on the hips. We syncopate it, and you have your pockets with the pull up on the pants. And they said, yep, what you want. And then we end up accenting here, the punch down, drop it through. Then you have your staging. Notice our levels. I like how unified it looks, which will help your communication projection. It's not the cleanest, specifically on range. Does your hair affect that? Yes. And then they end up this part right here. It reminded me of AG Squad taking out the flags and attacking the flags. It's a vibe. Did I cite that directly? I think that's a reach on my end, but it's just fun to think about because you are in Korea and, you know, they were on the show. And then we finished with the crown. Basically, we done took that back. It's ours. Thanks for playing. So, in general, I thought Royal Family, you guys, this was your smartest set to do and to go about it the way that you did, because it worked in your favor, as we saw. And I would say with both teams, everybody's growing in different ways. We don't know what's going on in the back end, and you're going to hear me say that pretty often because I think all of us need that reminder. We have no idea what's going on in the back end. So how we approach looking at the sets, yes, we can look at it with a criteria list, but it doesn't mean that they don't know. Like, a lot of these teams probably know a lot of the things that we're touching on, but also the goal is for us as an audience. I would love for us to be supportive of the fact that they are continuing to grow, continuing to find themselves as artists, continuing to have to calibrate to a criteria list. That's really tricky to do with the type of timeline that we have, right? Not only that, I think that every team is able to, you know, find a sense of growth through how we're choosing to interact with not just each other as teams, but with other teams, and then also with the fan base, like the internet having to get involved in it. It's very different beast than another circuit. So I think everyone I would say just be more encouraging versus not constructive, but like being encouraging and support and root for these teams because they deserve it. Match number 2, Brotherhood versus Quick Style. We're going to do a watch through and then review. Okay, and quick style.
아이디어 타임 여러분 안녕하세요. 저희는 음악과 춤, 안무 공통의 언어라고 있습니다. 그래서 오늘 노르웨이에서 온 특별한 무대를 선보입니다.
Gör det gott, gör det beast, jag krabbar och flyr. Du vet vad det betyder, min tid är dyr. Dere fick en kaka av plateselskapet da dere hade streamat bra. Det är dritkul, 2010 de sa till mig då på en pik bro. Det har gått 70 år sedan då, 70 år sedan då. Det är 70 år, eller 70 år sedan då. Det är 70 år. Sia silo ut från 16 singelliv, gamma high five. Jag som Mira Craig stage där, bla bla bla.
Quick stop.
Okay. We're going to start with Brotherhood. Now, I did hear that not just Brotherhood, but Quickstyle struggled in the area of copyrighted music. It never ends. And bless Brotherhood, I feel like they got the shortest end of the stick on so much of that. So I believe Brotherhood only had 5 days, and Quickstyle had a week, maybe, for these sets? Don't know. Can't confirm that. I believe 5 days, though, is confirmed because they talked about it on one of the IDL posts. So I bet you a lot of things we're going to talk about Brotherhood's like, I know, I get that. But we're still going to look at it to see, because they ended up taking 7 on the points, so what worked for them and what were areas of opportunity whenever you're dealing with a 5-day-old routine. So what worked for them? I would say most likely probably the projection and communication. They knew how to project their stamina. They kept it pretty consistent, even though area of opportunity would be the cleanliness. And I do believe that Quickstyle took the technical execution authenticity, which I think works well. Complexity of choreography, this one still had a really nice pacing, despite it being a 5-day-old routine. They had the complexity readable enough to where we can recognize it, right? So which is good. However, the cleaner you are, the more readable it is, the easier it's going to be to bump up that score, right? So it just shows you the importance of this category. I would say this series showed you the importance of this category. And also I would say area of opportunity would be the spacing happening in this respective set. I did notice a couple of areas within our features that we got a little bit off the mark, but then we corrected it, that kind of stuff, which I think works really well. And then the area of opportunity for this particular set, which I think it makes sense why this one wasn't as high, because when you're dealing with a 5-day-old routine, you're not able to let it sit and marinate as much to audit it, to make those adjustments. However, it's one of those things that regardless, just like the point I made with the GRV Royal Family set, regardless of circumstance of what we know going into the set or what we learn about the set before we review it, it doesn't mean that a judge is obligated to have to, consider that whenever they're judging it on a criteria list. Because it's not beneficial to anybody, where it's who had the worst off preparation time, they deserve the most points. That's kind of how that equates to if you try to bring sympathy into the game for a judge to do their job. That's not their job. That's the fans' job. That's the supporters' job. That is, I can take on that position because I'm not a judge. I get to know the information and be like, you guys did a fantastic job considering it for 5 days. This is a fantastic competitive routine and it still worked for you, right? So we're going to go ahead and go from the top here. So we start. Would I be able to kind of touch on what areas kind of feel like we had to throw it together, but it was still of quality and competition? It would probably be this section here. It's a basic pocket of timing. Spacing's super off. But I would say you notice there's so many people having to make these last second transitional movements where they have to kind of jolt out. I do think with this that's the case, just like we clocked with Royal Family with that transition coming out. This stage is freaking huge. So you have to calibrate accordingly, and it will affect your spacing, and it's going to affect your cleanliness in transition because it's not mirrored and it's not going to be balanced. So that's a big component of having to calibrate that. Yeah, and we still didn't even end up in center until the last little bit of that. But we were trying to be smart. We're making a lot of educated guesses in where we need to go and how we need to present ourselves. So we go round off, parkour, whee, backflip, and then we end up going to a fun stylized flip. Here is why we were able to clock that we were off on that flip, because we ended up having to move back. Do I think it was smart? I think it's fine, because when you're dealing with, when you deal with 20 people, yeah, having one person behind and front, that makes sense. Yeah, because I think that's Eldon, right? Eldon doing the flip, boom, he ends up there. He ends up right in front of somebody else. I do think it was a smarter choice to use the content, right? He's in that spot there, boom, to get to that spot. And to me, that's not a crash. It's not a crash. So you're not going to receive a deduction for it. You're going to receive probably a cleanliness drop, but not extensive, because that was one move and he fixed it within 2 seconds. So nothing crazy. Just like in the case with GRV with the flip, like that flip is not going to affect your criteria so much that it's going to cause you to lose. There was way bigger criteria getting docked, and that just didn't help. Same in the context there. So we have our content rotating through. It looks like we had that back group with our arms up, maybe to help with levels. Not quite as readable, but I like that. Was that a butterfly? No. Yes. No, it was just hitting it back. Da-da-da-da. Very polyrhythmic in content. They are showcasing a really good example. If you're going to combo it out, which is what they ended up doing for a lot of their set, just like what I touched on with GRV, they have complexity that supplements for that comboing it out. But they still have staging through levels, right? So they transition it. They get to their spots quickly, and their spacing is pretty decent enough to where you can see every formation you want them to get in and out of. I think that's really, really helpful. They drop it through. We have the levels. Once again, they rotate it, and then you still have it progress where our torsos are matching. We have levels, and then we have more of an extremity, exception going on with the group that's high. Even there, some of these aren't quite the most readable. Do the gloves help? I would say to a degree, yes. but also they can work against you for the same reasons. So we end up using one of our members to clock off one group to the side. So I actually liked how we had a middleman to break off a group and then to join into another group. I thought that was a very nice transition choice. And then they're here, looks a little bit more where we're getting responded, where we are engaging with what's going on in our next group, which I think is very smart. Because, yes, it's a bit simpler on our pockets of timing. Most of our teams in the environmental choreography is showcasing that because they don't want to take away from the focal point group, which makes sense. I know Brotherhood calls this complementary choreography, so I may call it that. So I like the transition over, but I like that they're using the psychology of if we as a group are looking at this group over here, us as an audience are going to want to do that too. A really nice way to deflect to where you want us to look, regardless if they are moving complexly or simply. So I like that they're not just frozen, but then they're frozen right there, more so just for a moment. That happens, right? So they have the knock, and then they end up rotating through. So we're walking, very simple on those choices. They pick their battles. This is the definition of what Brotherhood does to pick their battles and what categories to go for. And they're familiar in what they're used to as a group. They were able to find themselves on that criteria list before the season started. We just saw a reflection of that work at the New York series. So they had more time than any other team to settle into a properly formatted set that makes it competitive on this criteria list that makes it really hard to beat. Hence why a 5-day-old routine with Brotherhood, they've had to use, at least, was it I'm going to think about how many series. 10 in a year. 10 sets in a year, right? Goodness gracious, that's a lot. It's a lot of sets. They're used to probably doing 2 sets in a year. They had to do 10. So you get familiar with each other's movement qualities pretty fast. So that's why this set feels very familiar. Some people called it weak online. Is it weak in the expectations that you had? Probably. But when it comes to weak on the criteria list, if you're going to compare teams to the criteria list, Brotherhood is sitting on average. They're able to compete at a higher rate and hit a higher threshold of criteria because of the conditioning of being able to hit it as often as they can. So the predictability could be higher. However, they're able to supplement that in other categories they can have confidence in, and this routine is a result of that. Could Brotherhood do a routine like this a year ago? I don't know. Could it be because of the amount of routines they've had to do every single series, get them to the place where they're able to do this? Maybe. That's a growing point. And that's why I'm saying every team is growing, even if it's a set like this, where it may not look like it, they are. Because I don't know if they would have been able to do this with the amount of time given, with the people that they have, for in another country. That's crazy. So we take it from back to front. Well, the toss-up is cool with the pull-through. I like the commitment happening. I think that's day 10. Is that who that is? 17? So I like that his projection is really nice. And because he's featured in front, that extra pull was really nice. When you see your features, the features aren't being featured as isolated. But I will say one of the weakest sections is going to be the light feet section. The accent pull-throughs are fun, right? It's nice. So you have 9 Hamuza. They end up accenting, drop it through. So we have complexity. I like the individuality. And because we're clean enough, it was easier to see the individual moment. So that was cool. Now, not everybody's able to hit the light feet section with the same degree of authenticity as number 9. If you look at the outskirts, you're able to see more discrepancies. Am I saying that as a negative thing? Not necessarily. Nothing that I'm saying is really negative. It's just observational, where if you wanted to really refine, the sections, judges, fun fact, most of the time your judges are not going to be looking directly front and center. They're going to be looking behind center. They're going to be looking more outskirts. Because a lot of teams, I'm not saying Brotherhood's doing this, I'm not saying any team's doing this, but a lot of times you will see teams hide people who may not be as strong in the section. You will hide them in the 3rd row. You will hide them in the corners. But not corners, but like in the 2nd row of the corner. Because most of the time, your most captivating individuals are going to be front and center, and everyone's going to be drawn to that. But that is not where a judge only looks. You're only as strong as your weakest member, but no one's inherently weak. It's just unrefined. So I like the build up. So notice that those who are transitioning on and off, they match the same pocket of timing. I thought that worked. And then we have them build up there. They turn out of it. But everyone, including Brotherhood, everyone has the area of opportunity to grow through their transitions and through their complementary choreo. So also we are a little bit off with some of our members with our lower body is super close and some are super not. So that's going to be a cleanliness note, right? But luckily they're still low enough to where you can see the staging with levels. Bring it around so we have a more feminine bag out of it. We're syncopating it, right? But I would say this one also gets a similar note. I like the knock knock. The combativeness of that was cool to help match with the track. I think the remix was very tasteful where you have, you know, the track is familiar, but it is hybridized enough through other timbres and instrumentation being brought in. It's going to allow you as an audience as well as myself rediscover the track, which will help you on your musicality. That's why remixing a track can be helpful there. So you have different directions. It's not just a combo, right? Every single combo that we've seen of Brotherhood, they're continuing to add dynamics like a ripple, cannons, not as much a canon as I would say ripples. You have a lot of line changes, you have levels. So those things are helping and aiding into the content itself versus just doing the complex dance to get the complexity score. So I think that's what's really helping it make it still competitively balanced. So I like the knock on that with the hips is fun. Then we bring it back up, toss it through, sending it through. The overheads are nice, and then we have a nice drop level where you still have your feature being featured up, and then we accent it in a bookend. And then we have this is still considered a simple transition, but notice that everybody joins in. You still have your feature out, which is cool. We get a high-low, we have levels, we turn it over, and then number 4, go into the Juby slide. I've heard that called the slick back Juby slide, the rooftop transition, some of those. The toss down is fun. This is your viral bag that you would see with Brotherhood. It is one of the simplest viral bags we've seen. What am I clocking with that? I would say the content density is significantly regressed, meaning that we're not creating a ton of variance of what we normally see on social media in the bare bones type of expression we see those moves shown. Not only that, the pockets of timing. The pockets of timing show a lot of information. It shows how thorough we're being or where we're supplementing, right? Which is why you hear me talk about it a lot. So in the context here, we're hitting, we're syncopating on the predictable parts of the remix of the track. And then we end up doing a flip. He almost crashed that. So because he had to put his hands down, I would say ultimately the goal would be to complete your flip without having to put your hands on the ground. That's going to up your difficulty, right? And that helps more with projection. I don't know if our judges counted that towards anything in athleticism. So knock it back. So there's your add-on, right? So they're nice and low there, and they pull it through and brush it around. And then we end up accenting. I like the mirroring. Notice that transition. Who is that? Number 88 and 28. That's an example of that transition is going to be rewarded because it's mirrored, it's balanced, and it actually helps with composition of your staging, and it looks clean. Because it's not just we're all doing the same move. We're doing the same move with this. Sorry, I'm like doing this right here, but you don't even see it. You take those two and then you transition them out. That's a mirrored transition. It's gorgeous. I love seeing stuff like that. Look at that. Boom, boom. Ugh, that's probably one of my favorite type of transitions is when it's mirrored because it's intentional, right? And then we have the head nod, simpler on the complementary choreography. We end up isolating it with the swing downs. So, yes, you had Quick Style beat them in terms of the criteria list when they were both measured on the criteria list of technical execution and authenticity. I would say because they had a lot of quantity doing the styles, yes, that can help, but also it can backfire to the exact point I made earlier. If everybody cannot do the style as authentically as another, you can't be solely reliant upon one or two people. If your judge is seeing somebody else who clearly is, you can tell that style is 5 days old on their body. You know what I mean? Now, am I noticing that with Brotherhood? In some cases, yes, but not in the whole thing. Not in the whole thing. And I think they were smart in who they put in their sections. The travel up's fun. A little galloping transition out. They did the mirroring once again. Turn out is fun. Then they have levels with a drop level. So they have to use their legs. They have to drop the body low in order to make this kind of stuff happen. They're a bit simpler on the level justification. We have your features. Excuse me, I just burped and that was like a very awkward burp. So sorry. Going into the context here, I believe these are our 2 captains. Do IDL judges need to know that? I don't think so. I don't know what info they have. It's fun though for the audience to clock that. Toss is nice. So if we're giving area of opportunity, I would say Brotherhood focused primarily on the focal point sections. Still had their dancers on stage for complimentary because I would say that could lean more to helping versus hurting your score the more people you have, but that it's going to affect your complexity of choreo. Toss down. I would say the cleanliness, that helps on cleanliness to a degree. I like the redirection that we're having there with the transition across. The mouthing's fun. It was readable. Why? Because of the gloves. It was cool. The arm swings are cool. I like the redirections of the torso going in with the back group was cool there. And then we end up tossing it away. And then from here, thank you. This is a canon transition. And I really, really liked it because it looks complex. And it's not necessarily the most complex. Everybody just has to memorize their own individualized timing. And that's what brings complexity in the transition. Is the more you have to itemize it for the sake of making it work. And of course, you have some people have a lingering spacing discrepancy. They're having to get that fixed. I like the high 5. Then it goes into an add-on. Here we go. And then we do some more syncopated rotational choices, which actually helps on the type of sound that we have. The head is fun, and then that was a really tricky ripple, right? Hitting it through, there's a little whoa. Then we redirect it with some tension, and then we rotate it from outside to inside. I like the knock is really cool. We pull it away. That's also fun. We have your running man, and then we end up having it accented, and then we have the head there. We hop it, and the pull it is nice. The punches are fun, and then we send it around, and then we knock, facing the back. Boom. Cool. With a finish. So all in all, I think with this set, yes, is this a set that had more areas of opportunity for Brotherhood? Yes. Do I think they know that? Yes. So I didn't approach this with I don't approach any of these with these teams don't know what these areas are. Nah, there's a good chance they do in a lot of ways. And for me, I'm just trying to be helpful in, okay, with this criteria list, what's getting hit at what point and what's not getting hit and why. Like, it's kind of in that context because a lot of people may think, and I'm not saying everybody does, some people may think the criteria list, once you hit it, you don't have to think about it anymore. Nah, every single category has to be hit throughout the routine, and that gets mad hard, mad fast. Especially in certain categories like staging, like complexity of choreography, because you don't want it to be complex the whole time because then it just becomes redundant, which will affect other categories, right? So you have to be smart and know your brand and know yourself enough. Do I think Brotherhood knows themselves enough on this criteria list to be able to pull a routine like this with a time frame? Yes, we commend that. We celebrate that. I think that's a huge stepping stone of growth for them. I know they probably didn't want to experience that, but I think it's good to know they're capable. And it's good that they know that they are capable because they were put in that position have to. I hope they don't have to do that for LA and for the championship. I hope they're able to get all their music cleared and we're smooth sailing to where they're able to really enjoy and properly set up to have the best ideal Brotherhood without dealing with the music licensing issues. We'll see though. This one was a good one to review because of, the things that we had mentioned. Okay, quick style time. I'm gonna remember to look at the criteria first compared to Royal because I just went straight into it. Okay, what are some areas that quick style did pretty well? I would say they absolutely beefed up the transitions in their environmental choreography compared to the former series. A lot of their charm that they showcased in the New York series was brought back here, which I really appreciated. I believe they scored higher in creativity and in execution and authenticity compared to Brotherhood, which I think is really cool. Good for them, especially if they were navigating with a similar issue of having a super quick turnaround time on their set. That kind of stuff is no easy feat. What are areas of opportunity? That's going to be complexity of choreography. I would even say not quite the staging, but in particular how we're choosing to use the environmental dancers in the staging and kind of hybridizing or collaborating that together to still maintain the quick style aesthetic, but making it more competitive and a more complex competitive staging. So I'm looking forward to diving in on this routine. Here we go. I love that you started. I love that you started in Korean. I think that's so appropriate for the space that you're in, because it's in Seoul, which Korean is going to be the language that most of the audience speaks. This is really fun. So I like the knock. The accent's really fun. The tap is also really fun. They knock with the elbow is cool. So your content itself is really nice. I would say number 24's engagement into setting up in that first feature is really nice. And everybody held it down for projection of that. I think works really well. Also, I want to give a special shout out to number 18. I could only imagine how hard it is to go from how it felt in the Sydney series, and you probably felt so responsible to a degree, right? And I just want you to know I'm so proud of you for not a single mistake was clocked, and not a single, oh no, we're getting ahead of the music was clocked. So I see the progress there. I'm so proud for that, and you should be so proud of yourself. I wanted to say that. I think it's important to note. Right, so we have the sway down. So I like that you had with your dancers coming up from the top. You have the pocket of timing explored. Are we going to continue to use that same pocket? Maybe. But I want to look at that. Look at the range on that. That's pretty good. For the upper body, it was really nice. We switch it up. Everybody joins in and they break off. It was really cool. The transitions between our groupings were really nice. Super readable. Very readable whenever you pop into different groupings. Really fun. Then we have a deviation from your feature there. Everybody else was fun. Tossing it down, we have some levels, which is nice. So we had knock spacing would be a great area of opportunity in a lower transition like that. I appreciate the risk of it though. We knock it through. The travel around is also nice with the send off. Then we have the speed change happening with another group. I thought that was really fun to continue breaking off in that way versus everybody going off and then they come back on. And then, but you also have more of a constant fingerprinted transition off. So just like I've given with every single team thus far, that note or that observation area of opportunity of having more complex transitions would be very helpful in timing specifically, not in the content itself. Slide around is cool. So we have a little rock away. A little not quite sure on how far in the degree of the fullness we were going there. And then we traveled around. Our spacing's just a smidgen off, but I know that we did that to enter in one of our members, which I don't mind. I thought that was a really nice puzzle piece, but it was something clocked there. So we end up knocking with a travel back. The toss away is nice with a run forward. And then we end up running away. I appreciate that timing choice, but of course we have somebody, not of course, but we have somebody break away. Could it be because we try to get off stage quickly and our spacing's a smidgen off? And then we have some subtlety going on with the head. Then we end up rotating around. Yes! Fun. We run away. It does look like we almost trip over here, which happens. Traveling it down. Spacing could be a bit more improved. We have more of a speed change, which I love me a good speed change. I really like it. You guys use speed changes pretty often. I enjoy seeing them. Can that affect complexity of choreography? Yes, because the speed change takes up a lot of time. It's meant as a really good filler, specifically for transitions or to help embellish or to ornament a feature group. So I like the choice, and I can hear it in the track, so it helps on musicality. Is there a way to create more athletic speed change risk-taking? Possibly, right? So that can help beef up the difficulty if you're going to supplement accordingly. The knock-up is fine. Looks like you had your feature there. Then we heel twist to get us to the diagonal. Spacing, I would say, an area of opportunity to improve on that. And they run off facing the side, sending it back. They have a knocking with the clap. That's I remember, what was it? The toxic after the double turn into that. I think that's what your clock. So that's a Brotherhood clock. Yeah, walk it forward. She said, excuse me. They ripple it with a travel down. They bring it through. The call outs that we're seeing here, I think are fun because they're not like super gimmicky. Even whenever we lift the shirts to show the red, it's not a super big gimmick where we're not taking ownership of the choices. I think we did very well with what we're pulling from older Brotherhood sets to do call outs. I think it works very well. It made it competitive in that front. And the body roll was fun. Some of our range was a smidgen off, specifically in the body roll to come up, but it was fun to see the choice. There it is, there. So they have them break off, which I thought was fun. She said, come here. Ooh, Woe is me. So we have a little walk on, a bit simple, which that's a note for everybody. Every team that we've seen, big area of opportunity for that. Walking through. The hips were fun. We have taken the arms, sending them around. We end up accenting with a speed change. So they're like, hey, what's up, what's up? We turn. The elbow, that part. I remember when there were a TikTok or Instagram reel of Brotherhood saying what's one of the most like Brotherhood moves, and it's like the Scott choice. I do wish it was more clean, clear, and projected more, because I think that would help with that. Little call out spacing could improve here. The running through. And they said, what's up, what's up? With a drop down, we do a speed change out of it. They knock with a travel through. The accent with the hips. I like the speed change. It's cool. I think it really helps. Because it's not full on crump, but low key you do have the posture of it. And I like the isolation through the trace across. It was nice. They hit it high-low. There's your jabs. They send it around. She sends it back. Haha. Which is also fun there. Now we have these ISOs. This section I really, really enjoyed. I think it had a big area of opportunity for a couple things. Firstly, love the speed change you do. We have ISOs, the travel across. At that point, that's really fun. Then you have everybody redirect in their speed change. They come back up. Then they go back down. We could have switched feature to a different person and then switch it to a different person in the trios. So not just making it to where you have these little trios, which I love, where you have some people speed changing to and fro, but making moments within the trio to do these switch offs, these interactions with the dynamics in play that could add more complexity to your staging that way. I think is what I noticed when I saw it. So like the look there, that could have been, instead of having your feature that you've had for as long as you've had them, switch the feature, right? So that could be something that gave the impression that we were kind of extending in the section potentially a little too long in our staging because we didn't deviate. But I like the quantity of people doing it. I think that really matters, and it's something to take note of. That's great. So we do the trace across. Travel the Josh is fun. And I like the pulse on that is also really nice. There's a lot of time to be in the same place, even though we had a lot of dynamics happening. That's just, I love the section, and I love the potential of what that could be too, if we choose to explore something like that again. So I like the interruption and the switch offs in our levels is really nice. That's cool. We bring it up, sending it back, redirect with the toss down. The clap high five is also really nice. They hit it high-low. I like the travel. The intensity was elevated here. Bit of a teasy choice where everybody's more individualized. If we were cleaner in the sections leading up to that, that could, I would say, have more forgiveness in the cleanliness area. But because, or not quite that, more so it would have come across potentially more readable as an individualized choice if other components like the direction of our torsos, direction of our weight shifts, had that clarity and uniformity. That way we would be able to really enjoy, appreciate the arms, the upper body. The punch out, I like the chest on that, was fun. Then I would say the transition to get everybody on stage, everybody doing the same thing, but we're all going to and fro to different spots, I think was smart to a degree. And they go da-da-da with the head, so having the head syncopation with the ISOs, I thought was fun. Then to the light feet section. I like that because I would say Brotherhood uses light feet more than any other team in their respective sets. So having them do that here, I think, was a proper stylized dig. And I think it works even better the fact that they got the not the creativity, they did get that too, but the technical execution and the authenticity scores. The drop it down is really nice. You end up sending it back. Notice the bass on that. The bass is basing, which means they have to really match it on intensity. The travel forward, send it around. Notice we have these groups, right? I would say, what is it? The staging of the environmental complementary choreography, I really like. I would say quick style so far in the sets that we've seen, in the second watch, I really, really like the choices here. It's the dynamics and what we're doing that we could workshop and find ways to continue to elevate complexity of choreography as well as our staging with the usage of, I mean, you guys have your levels, so that really helps. Toss it back. Lean back. Tossing it through. I like the chest where everybody puffs it up on the word chest. Great wordplay moment over musicality. And then the ripple is really fun. That could be a possible add-on moment where the combo happening here calibrates to the group, but I like the ripple of the focal point redirection of looking to the side. There's your feature leaning to the inside. Travel back. So I like the hops on that. Was fun. Lean it back. Yep. Cool. Lean it through. So you have some unison. Choreography. With the angles is fun. We end up knocking, which is also really nice. Take it up. And then you have the, excuse me, with the glitching vibration style effect on it. Then you have more light feet brought in, which I thought was really tasteful. Instead of just doing the light feet section, we did a little bit of it as a part of our ending section, which is cool. The knock is fun. Bring it in into a lock-in. I think that helps in the key element justification front. And then they have a fun little Korean heart at the end. How fun! So in all, well done to Quick Style, especially if it is true that you had about a week to make this set. This is already a significantly stronger set than what you brought in Seoul and what you brought in Vancouver. So imagining this direction, workshopping more complexity within the staging, dynamically, outside of what you did. Like, I love that. And your transitions have a competitiveness to it, but adding more complexity there, I think could really, really help advocate your set to winning more criteria lists when you're going up against other teams. So this was really nice. You should be so proud of yourselves. And also, we always got to give that shout out to number 18. Well done, girl. Are you guys hanging in there? No, this is a bit long, but this is the last series that I get to do the wide cam reviews in this way until I'm there in person. We're going to be looking at 1mil versus Jam Republic. We're going to watch through and, of course, do the same thing that we've done with the other other 4 teams. Let's go. Republic.
Beat 'em up one time. I'm on the advance, I'm on the advance. I know that I told you I need the advance. Put down your IG and look through my lens. Like my Instagram, I hope that I offend. You got your dreams to me as a fan. I made it to me and did it again. So, meanwhile, I use it like dance. Like I'm a G, told me that I had chicks. So then I cut the phone. Do it get back.
Okay. So 1 million to begin. I'm gonna start. I got emotional watching that. Because if we're gonna give most improved award, it's gonna go to 1 million for sure. From launch event, honestly, from New York to here. Ooh. Fan the flames of that. Wow. I got goosies on some of your staging. Oh, it's so nice. Okay, and also, hi, Jonah. I told Jonah to chat him out forever, and it's going to be forever. What worked very well in your favor? I'd say staging. Please don't you don't need to do anything. Like, keep doing what you're doing on your staging. I think it's fantastic. The transitions, getting in and out of your choices is just, it's so good. So good. We're going to have to look at the transitions specifically from one group to another, but I would say how it's framed environmentally with the complementary dancers, I think is on the freaking money. Fantastic. I would say this one projected and communicated, I would say the most compared to, I would say one that's right up there would be Royal Family, specifically against GRV. I think that's, goodness gracious, stamina through and through, fantastic. We started great and we finished right there. There weren't any divots in your choreography. Also didn't showcase symptoms of that either, which is great. Areas of opportunity, I'm going to say cleanliness, specifically in terms of hair. So what's interesting about this is that just like with prop usage, which I know we don't have prop usage here when it comes to, I would say the flannels in Royal Family, for example, or how the jersey is tied. I don't think you even fix that, I think. I see. Yeah, so I remember making the note. I think it was with 1 mil. Yeah. And I've said this about Jam Republic too, that if you tie your jersey and not everybody makes the same choice, that can affect the range of that garment. It's true. In the context here with hair, Everybody has different hair textures, which means that their hair is going to exist in the choreography differently. So it can affect the range, not the timing of A to B, but how long it takes to get there, because you can't control your hair, right? So do you need to do something about it? No, I wouldn't say necessarily. I don't know if it's going to make that much of a difference, but that can be something if you wanted to focus on cleaning it. That can be a very easy way to do that. And I would say another area of opportunity, I know the complexity of choreography, I can see that we're supplementing that for staging. Because some of the staging choices, I would say, would be significantly harder to read the way that you have them set up if there were more complex content to justify. So I see that. However, I'm really happy. God, I'm so happy with this. It's one of your best sets. Oh, okay. Let's talk about it. Here we go. So we start, it's giving exorcism from the jump, right? Where we have more of a prayer accent. They're like, please. We drop from surrender to now, not really scarecrow, but more of a possessiveness, which into the track Judas by Gaga. It's one where it's, what is it? I'm more of a Jesus follower, but in context to the track itself and the creepy what's the best way to word it? Into the creepy textures that you guys are bringing into the space in performance, but also in movement quality, I think absolutely sells on a musicality front for this particular type of track. Now, I do know that Jam Republic ended up taking the musicality score, and I do think it comes to the content itself, which is once again that area of opportunity for you guys, is within the actual structure of the dance, outside of how you have it in formation, using more risk-taking choices like texturized uniformity. That can not only really beef up the cleanliness score if you get it clean, but that's going to help your complexity of choreo as well. Because we are pursuing similar pockets of timing in our dance, but I noticed there's so many levels happening. Even though we have simpler pockets of timing, it still works. Some of our range could be a little bit more improved on those choices. So we still have this surrendering aspect going in, having her drop down. Really fun way to get her up to the knees. It's intentional. It doesn't look like a drop because we placed her down with the same amount of control that we transitioned her into, which is really nice. But notice we got columns nice and spaced out. We have our V with our legs prepped in, so we have our levels, and this level is significantly lower compared to this crouch level. So we have 3 levels represented, and you still have feature, and they're all framing to the inside. So you grab her with the lift up. All that's super fun. The surrender-esque aspect, it did struggle just a bit to get her up into there, but I like the tone setting. Great intro. And then the grab there. I think it was so smart to put Baek Young there, because both in round 2, when he comes in, it elevates the projection, specifically by how he's pushing with the choreography of the respective section. Because the prep work and the tone setting is really, really nice on that. Yeah, specifically in this surrendering aspect. And what justifies it further is the fact that you have your outside dancers with their arms extended that actually complements what's going on with his feature. And of course you have the surrendering grab. I love the commitment from our dancers, which is why it makes sense that the hair is down. That's why I'm like, you could kind of take that note with a grain of salt, because I think it works for the concept, specifically in this context here. God, it's so nice. Yeah, the grab is nice. The commitment there, I would have absolutely hit my head on the freaking ground. It also requires a lot of trust of our dancers to make sure that they're being grabbed to do that kind of thrashing moment. The drop down. So this context specifically, right? The subtlety there with the knees was really smart. Boom. The grab is also with the hinge is nice. The travel up with the extremities and the angles. And then we end up sending it all the way back. I like the range on that. The beginning section had that complexity. Look at the hair. See, like that's, when it works out like that, it freaking works. Yeah. So the grab in, the transition is nice. The punch out is cool. It does entertain something quite similar to the angle that we already presented about 2 8 counts ago. Yes, different contexts in how we're choosing to go about it. But because of that punch, I know it helps in projection and matching that base extensively. But that can run into that creativity of content specifically, but also musicality. When you're choosing, it's not redundant, but the music soundscape that you're existing in, what sounds you're choosing to justify, and are you justifying them similarly? That would be my observation I'm noticing here. And it's hard not to because it's so intense, right? They bring it in, then you have your angles up top. Of course, I would say that'd be a bit cleaner, would be an area of opportunity there. The flips, thank you for matching the flip timing on that. I think it was just the tail end. We just landed a little bit different. Then we have the arms, but we got right back in it. And that could be, you know, if my hair is in front of my face, it is really hard to know where I am, right? So that's the hard part of having your hair down and up. That'll be the last time I talk about the hair, hopefully. Yeah, so I have the lean back is nice. I also love that you guys are doing a Gaga bag because you did Gaga last series and then you're doing Gaga here. If Lady Gaga picks you up, I would have zero qualms with it. If she ever comes to Seoul for a concert, she better be calling up 1 mil. Okay, so I like the walk off is nice, but notice that it's been on the simpler side. Totally fine because every team, I would say, has gotten that note today, and I will say there will be a high chance that Jam Republic's going to receive that note too, but of course we have to go over and verify. I like what you're doing here. In the inversion of the knees with the arms is fun. The accented, but notice that kick. You see what I mean? We're doing a lot of kicks to punch accent in comparison to making a different choice to still accent that same sound. I think that would be an area of opportunity to beef up complexity of choreography, is look where we're creating potential redundancy of music justification, specifically in extremities. And then we go into a coupe turn, which is really fun. They bring it in. I like the walk with purpose. I don't hate it. I think it's fun. They drop it down with the bleed up. It's nice. To the floor we go. And then we have a nice arch back. Really, really nice. I love the control of that. Really fun. We end up having our arms through. That helps with stylistic athleticism. Then we drop down into a back walkover. How nice would it have been to have multiple people do that? If we have a 1-point feature, how is everybody else contributing to it? Firstly. Secondly, this is something that Arnell has stated in his feedback in multiple interviews, that 1-point features can work against you because the quantity is not enough to justify the complexity and athleticism of the section as much as if you had more people doing it. So having somebody, I don't know if anybody else can do it the exact way that she's doing it, but having something along those lines with multiple people can help in your staging, it can help in your athleticism, and it can help in your difficulty. Right? So the walkover, God, that bass is basing. I love the sporadicness of that. That was fun. Then they end up taking it around. It looks like not a cannon, but we do deviate. The first part was a ripple, but then we created our own little moment on that, having to take it and we stage it over. I like the lines. Nice and clear. The inversion here. Oh, guys, I'm so glad we're seeing this as a wide view. The angle, sending it, bring it to the inside with a flick around. Love that. And then we separate. I think from right here is when I got genuinely teary-eyed because the amount of space you guys covered in an 8 count is insane. And you had complexity. Watch this. Boom. 1 and 2 and 3. And we had tension. We rotated around. I would say spacing looks pretty good on this first line. It is a bit hard to see and appreciate the spacing all the way through. And I think part of it, I said I wasn't going to talk about the hair. It could be the hair. But that's the same thing as if you had the gloves. That's not enough to really factor into that, though. Oh, the spacing's just a smidgen off right here. There it is. Okay. But my God, I love the mess out of this. Into an add-on with a basis, da-da-dum-dum, with a kick, ball change, with a turn. That's risky having to do a turn like that in a transition step while maintaining the spacing's gorgeous here. Just a smidge off on a weight placement. My God, this is gorgeous with a drop down. And then we have this over, go from a prayer hand to fold over, and then we have our whacking overheads. The fact that you went with the styles of whacking and tutting and that type of intensity with these animated elements makes my heart sing and soar. This is so smart to do it because you guys thrive in those spaces. Using the styles of familiarity but intensifying them with your staging and using it for interpreting your music in different ways is such a good approach for you. This is fantastic. I love that with the drop down. And then I see the attempt to get it to reverse because we had just single people coming up. It was harder to appreciate the comeback because you had it so impressionable going down, but then it kind of dropped out a bit and then it built back up. But I appreciate the intention of that. The flick up, and then it also looks like we have more people adding on. Range just a smidgen off here, so it makes it hard to see that add-on. But my goodness, the transition where you guys get over into this moment, Sick. Sick. I love it. And then they open. I love that moment. They drop it down. Notice the focal point of I'm looking to this next group. Both just passed off feature moments. That is a fantastic way of using complementary choreography, complementary dancers to do a pass off versus just having a group just exist for 5 8 counts or for 2 8 counts. Nah, we passed it and then got passed right back. What's a great way to do that? Actually looking at the team or the section of the team that you want your audience to look at. And I love how we have the arms extended, and I love how we had ourselves resting on a really fun way to have some levels. The overheads are nice. This mess, oh my God, are we doing a bedrock? This is complex. Yes. This section, 1 million, because I know 1 million watches this. Okay. Specifically, this section here would be a fantastic example of complexity of choreography with staging. This right here. Because we're syncopating and the lean back is really nice with the head, with a drop down, with a pull up assist. So using quantity of people, even though you have a feature in front, to be able to make this back group collaborative, but they're able to justify on their own front. Lord help us. That's a fantastic section. Oh my God. Okay. This is great. Guys, I'm so proud of you. You have no idea how proud of you I am. My God. Okay. The drop down. I like the extension. I like the risk taking of the extension because that's hard to get clean. It was pretty clean. Then they end up walking away. That could have been an area of opportunity instead of just neglecting the transition because the next feature's on. That would be an area to help bump up your creativity score. There. The grab with the drop down. I like the kick with the press up. Love that. With the more of that zombie-esque look. I do believe some people were citing you guys were going off of East Palace. Now, do the judges have to know that reference? No. Can they go off of the music and go off of the movement? And I would say what we have in terms of performance, the makeup, the things that we've contributed to the overall look for musicality, I would say yes, you can do that for your concept, for sure. And I think that's how I normally measure creativity, not quite the concept outright if you're too on the nose, which we'll get into that in the round 2 reviews. The press back's cool. I like the knees on that. That right there, great way of doing a pull up. I love the partnering moment here. We bring it in. Now people are walking back on. Is that an area of opportunity? I would say yes for your transition. That was fun. I liked the grabbing, the intensity of that's cool. The arms are also really fun there. We do a grab. Come on, athleticism, I would say. I love the extension. I wish everybody was doing this, or we modified to get us all to have a nice straight 90-degree angle. And of course, our range just a smidge off with some of our members. Drop it down. Then we have some partnering moments. Then I think that we have some partnering happening here. We have one member that's by themselves, which is interesting considering you're supposed to have 20 people, right? So everyone should have a partner unless somebody's not here. They'll lean back out. We grab. We rotate, sending it through. I have a feeling Mihawk's not on stage. Baek Koo-young's not on stage, number 19. That's why we had one person there, which you don't have to have all 20 on stage the whole time. He's pulling a Scott Forsyth, isn't he? We do a grab with a pull up, with a send down is nice. Arm swing around with a pull through. The partnering's nice there. Then we bounce. I think spacing could be, spacing looks pretty okay. I think it's a bit unclear what's going on specifically in the center section, but I can see the outskirts are looking pretty in line. Pretty good. The kick, notice that kick. We've seen that about 4 times on that base, but of course it was introduced in different contexts, but that's an area. I know that's meant to hit full body to match the intensity. It helped your stamina and it helped your projection, but that's not helping on your creativity of content, and it's not helping your musicality or your complexity. The turn, we do a coupe turn. We've already seen that before, but I do like the coupe. So I will say we may be running a risk with some of our stylization and some of our music justification. That's going to be an overall note I'm noticing here as an area of opportunity when you're going the creepy concept, which is so your wheelhouse. Not surprised because of the 1 million mega crew that we saw, which we'll get into. We'll get into in round 2. But I like the rotation around. It's super fun. The accent rotation drop is cool. The punch high-low is cool. The hops are nice there. The punches are really cool. Then we go to the column. I would say our column over on stage right could have been a little bit more refined. Accents high-low. Going straight into the X. That is really tricky to do in our staging. Goodness gracious, that was risky. The head is nice, and then we have a fun finish. Boom, on the tail end with the prayer. So you even bookended it in concept, where we were reintroduced conclusively to what we saw in the beginning. Do we have everyone on stage? No, we don't. Totally fine. You're allowed to do that. But I thought it was smart. I see how you guys use back Kooyoung, because he was Scott Forsyth this routine, and I'm curious if I'm going to notice that in round 2. That's interesting. Guys, you get a round of applause. 2 thumbs up for this direction. I think this is, you have found it. You have found it, which is great. Great. And it makes me so excited to see you guys live in LA. Like, it's going to be really cool to see what you guys choose to bring there. And you absolutely demolished the staging criteria through and through in a really fun way. And I think the styles you chose to do were so freaking smart. Absolutely. I would say, of course, I still stand by, I would say, your cleanliness. In certain components, I understand why it wasn't clean. And then also in other areas, making it cleaner will make it read better, and also complexity. But I also, once again, understand why certain choices were made, because of the staging took the forefront. Now it's figuring out the middle ground between getting your staging and your musicality, not having these go-to things you want to do, finding more creative ways of executing that, by also being complex to help score those 2 categories. Because I know that could be a goal for you, because you've gotten the note before of complexity. Thank God for wide cams, am I right? Okay, we're at Jam Republic. I love that you guys like that I said it like that, and I'm glad I said it like that on accident, because it just rolls. You just want to say it with an R. Okay. We can't start this yet. We have to look at the criteria list. Okay. I completely understand why Jam Republic got musicality now, and I think wide cams give a lot of that away. Because, to my knowledge, leading up to the Soul series, how I was choosing musicality, which based on my criteria that I had, I stand by my choice, but now knowing how I think the judges are approaching it, it's different. It's the usage of the choreography. Choreography here, right? Not staging. Staging is formations. It's not the choreography. It's not the content. So that's why, to Clay's point, when a team wins complexity of choreography, normally they would win that musicality score. Normally they would win the cleanliness score. So it's interesting that we got musicality, Jam Republic got. And I'm very curious too. I know, what was it? Nicholas got voted for Jam Republic. I would love to see his itemized scores of each category for that, because it really does show, is Nicholas wrong? No. If Nicholas could justify it, then it's absolutely, he's completely in the right to vote who he voted. It's the same thing as if you had a 3-4. You know, these judges are just as justified in voting for this team as these judges did for this team. If you can explain based on the criteria list and not using your feelings and not using outside circumstances to justify it, I think that's totally fine. Which is why I thought it was interesting. I wasn't offended. Why am I offended by people doing their job and doing it well, right? It's just, it sparked a lot of interesting conversation though, because he had to have looked at certain categories and awarded them based on his scope in ways that some of our other judges and their scopes did not reward them, right? Okay, so what worked for Jam? We saw it was musicality. I absolutely believe that beginning section especially was really, really nice. And their tracks that they had, it sounded like they had used the track similar to Brotherhood, I think, right? If I'm remembering, Brotherhood's Round 1 was a similar track, different remix, which is cool. They didn't have to know that they used each other's tracks because they weren't against each other. So that's why that was fun to see. What was another area? I thought their stamina, I thought they were pretty consistent across the board from beginning to end. Area of opportunity would be the cleanliness. I do know Jam Republic, depending on how much time they have together, will determine how clean their dance is. That is just Dance Team 101, regardless of whatever circuit you're in. If you're together longer and you're able to really focus on getting that dance clean, it's going to be cleaner than if you were just meeting and you had like 2 rehearsals. So I know that's been a constant combative thing for them. Vancouver is probably their cleanest sets, quite simply because they were together longer. full force in that. I would say staging would be a huge area of opportunity. I would say 1 million absolutely showcased fantastic elements of that. Jam focused more on choreography, specifically the musicality, right? And you can absolutely see that, and I think that's why they were probably rewarded for both of those. I don't remember what all categories Jam got. I do remember they got musicality, though. Okay, let's chat about it, fam. I will say this one was cleaner than I was expecting it to be for knowing how much time you had. That's definitely an area in the right direction. Okay, so we're starting. I like the combativeness. Notice the gloves. It's giving Rock Lee. If you know, you know, right? Which matches the music. I like the bass on that. The accent high-low. They punch it through. I like how we have fullness from everybody except for Feature. I touched on this with another team where they had everybody being subtle except for a couple people being very complex. That's the same thing, just the opposite end of it. Both are cool. But I would say having your feature be subtle and everybody else be more complex will help your score in this criteria list because quantity works well in your favor for complex things and difficult things. I like the front walkovers. Look at that. So the exact note that I gave in 1 million about having one person do the back walkover, this worked in their favor, I would say, because they had 2 people doing a complex thing, which is a front walkover. They had it mirrored, which I really like. Then you have the back flips, and then I like how we had the landing. Landing wasn't quite as stable in center, but it's still really nice that we see clear landings happening from our members here, and they look in line. I very clearly see what's going down, so I thought it was great. You guys measure that stage well. We come up, you have that, I like the look. Eye contact, some people added some extra gesture, so it was hard to see that clear dynamic shift there. Arms swing up. The hop is fun, the pop through. That little ha, ha. And you guys are, whether it's a remix or it's on the original track, we're catching sounds or we're using sounds that aren't the top priority list of what's expected in the track to justify. And that's what helps the musicality is when you are guiding your audience to hear the song in the way you want them to hear it and the sounds that come with that. And I would say there's a lot of readability there, which is why a lot of times when you have a high clarity score, regardless if you win it against an opponent, if you have a high cleanliness score, that can affect those other categories that Clay had mentioned, quite simply because the more readable it is, the more we can pick up the nuance of the music, which therefore means you have a higher chance of scoring higher in your musicality. So that was really cool. So I like the basses there. Like we're knocking and we're hitting it in different ways, which was a note that I gave to 1 mil, that we were hitting certain sounds in certain ways similarly, almost too similarly, that can affect your complexity. So the toss, knock around, I would say we can work on our spacing a bit, especially in our trio over here, but I like that we're using the actual look to be able to see that group a little bit easier. Some of our levels could be really a little bit better, but I like that we have levels here. And then we do a forward roll, and then we have a reversal. That sound was cool. Not quite the most readable, but it could just be because of the cleanliness side. I like the speed change on that. Then we end up doing some airtime over another dancer. Hey, that's cool. That's risky, right? And then we have another group, small group. Now we are sharing a lot of the same level. Levels can really help make it even easier to see your feature group outside of just content difference, and it allows your other group, your environmental complementary group, to be able to actually settle and do more complex things in the section. The running was fun. The toss around is nice. I hit it high-low. And also shout out to Miyabi. I know that she is dealing with I don't know if it's the same injury, but she is not at 100% here because I looked at her Instagram story. I hope you're feeling better, girl. Also looking here, it looks like Miyabi has her shirt tied in the back. Is that affecting their cleanliness? I don't think as much as other things are, but if you wanted to help your cleanliness, that is an area of opportunity. The head is cool. Travel it forward. The knock is also fun. Then we have a speed change happening in the back, most likely to cater to the sound. And then they come up and they end up crossing. So we're sharing a lot of levels, so that can give some staging opportunities, workshopping that more. Not just in level high-low, but levels and then angles in the torsos or in to create really fun, like blooming frames like this, or having it inverted like that. It's a bit weird for me to do that with my hands, but hopefully that makes sense. So from there, it was fun. I liked the intention of that with the isolations, a bit hard to read because of the mix of the height of our dancer mixed with the shared level. Also with the lack of cleanliness of the section, it wasn't as refined. So it was hard to really appreciate the section, but you could still read it enough to understand that we're trying to go complexly. With our music, tap on the wrist, drop it down, the knock was fun. Now, this bit here, I don't know how much time you guys had to write Jonah's name. I think the front cam shows Jonah's name. It doesn't show the face as well. I think the wide cam shows Jonah's face better. I do think that we could have had more bolded letters outside of just a paint pen, something like that, to really help read that. That would make it so much easier to associate the face to the person. I could tell we were dissing someone, but it took me too long to figure out who that was. Whenever you do a gimmick, the goal is for it to be read immediately and not after an amount of time because of context clues making me have to think more than I need to in order to appreciate the section. Because what happens is if I'm thinking about who this is, I'm not able to appreciate everything else that you're doing. The slap on that, very combative. I saw Jonah share this section on his Instagram, and I really like what he said. So it's all in good fun. Jonah's not offended by this. Like, so if you were worried about that, he's fine. So we ended up sending it around. So did we keep the gimmick too long? Yes. I absolutely believe we did, because I would say at this point, I don't think we needed it anymore. About 2 8 counts gets the job done. So we hinge, but we're making it its own moment, and we bleed it through the 8 count with a drop down. I like that we have, another person pop up, but then we're still beating up Jonah. Oof. And it's also risky business to do that in 1 mil territory, but I also know Jonah is American, so if you're gonna diss someone, you just diss the American, I guess. Because I don't know if that would have I don't know if people would have been as big of a fan if it was Leah that they were doing that. You know what I mean? So I think they picked the right person. Sorry, Jonah. And they were gonna do that gimmick. I'll say a bit of a simpler transition off. Oh, hold up. Yeah. But they are going on the sound. I'm clocking it. And then we end up sacrificing it into more of like a basket runny style. So that would be my note there, is commit to the transition all the way off stage, even if it's prolonged longer than you practice it. Because when you go and then you go off of character, if we see that, that's going to be a really high chance that your creativity score drops, your transition score drops in the categories that it affects. You send it around, then we end up doing more of a basket run transition is what I'm going to clock that as. We could have found a more creative way to do that. We end up doing a separation. We grab it, we rotate it through. The grab is fun. And then I like the remix of the poker face. I thought that was smart. That was cool. Would it have been a bigger surprise if we didn't have the Jonah dig? Possibly. But also, if you're going to do it against the team that they're on. So I get that. They hit it with the accent through. And I like the kick out of that. And then we have a little drop with the trace up. Was cool. I like the quantity being used for that feature was nice. We drop it down. I like the levels to supplement for the simplicity of the timing. That's great. And then they join back in. They're like, annyeonghaseyo, which is hello in Korean. The drop down is cool. I would say we are a little bit simple happening in the environmental choreo, but I like that we have everybody join in with your feature. The trace around is fun. So we have a single feature. Having quantity would really help, but her feature wasn't super long. So I think it didn't affect as much as if it was a very prolonged feature, right? So the grab, drop down. So we end up accenting, showing off a little bit, our hard work, and then we knock. She comes back down. I like the levels. Bring it to the inside. The pull in is cool. Yep. So we end up taking this with these hops are fun. We're getting in a more trendy bag, and then we go do-do-do-dooms. That was cool. I like that. The little do-do-do-doom. Then we have a wordplay choice, ba-da-da, which is also cool. We cross it and cross it. Then we go to the column. I think this column wasn't quite the cleanest, so it was hard to appreciate that. Here, boom. Yeah, like right here. We're incomplete, so that would affect your spacing, and that would affect your staging. So we open it up, and because they ended up coming out, they couldn't correct it, so I get it. Totally get that. And then we have tension. Now all of us are executing that section differently, so that's going to affect your projection. That's going to affect your stamina just a little bit, unless you were performing it differently from the jump. But I think that's very minor because I do have this at 0.6. That I know. And then also, it's going to affect your cleanliness, if I didn't say that already. The accented through. I like the polyrhythm of delegation here, where we're not ignoring what we're remixing it with. I will say, I appreciate the formation and those who are environmentally, being pushed and pulled, but they're catering to the because that is remixed into the track. So I like that we have the polyrhythm through delegation, where we have more of the melodic rap being happened through the features in the column, and then the columns themselves are catering to the other track. Really nice. The pull away is nice with the swipe away. Toss down is nice. The punches are cool. The brushes with the arm arching up. Then we end up sending it all the way across. Then we toss. Then we pull it through. So we have that unison kind of finish. Spacing can improve. We have it way more spaced out on stage right compared to stage left. And then the punch, I like the syncopation of that is nice. So you get the punch. Nice. We rotate it. And then we create tension with the speed change, with the kickball change. More levels, dynamic opportunities could have absolutely existed in that section. Then we have the ripple with the airtime. Not everybody committed to that particular section, specifically in the torso and the legs. We stayed a little bit too upright with some of our people, so that's going to affect your cleanliness, and it's also going to affect the projection. The overheads were fun to see there. The travel up is also fun to see there with the punch, and then we have a fun finish on the tail end. So I thought they did very well in the criteria list. I think this is an improvement from what we were noticing from the other series. I think just like to the point with Brotherhood, would they have been able to create their set in 5 days, if that is officially confirmed? I believe it is. A year ago, 10 sets in, I don't think so. And I think that shows the growth of the team and their synergy as a whole. I think Jam Republic can be extended that same courtesy compliment of a lot of them have had to calibrate in very short amount of times these types of sets, and they have to be measured very strictly. So having and getting the information they're getting and applying it. I have no idea how many rehearsals they had. I have no idea what last minute things were existing outside of, the injury with Miyabi. But that doesn't show up as much here as it did in the previous series. So they should absolutely pat themselves on the back for that. The fact that they're still winning categories against sets that have a really, really high captivation rate that you saw with 1 mil, especially in home territory where you're combating a lot of votes, right? So, but all in all, this first round was really fun. And I did take much longer with each team, and I think part of that is, like I said, this is the last time I'm able to just see it on, like these will be the last time, these will be my first watches, are the wide cams, in reviewing in this way, because I'll be there live. So my first time watching any of them are going to be from this kind of vantage point. Hopefully I'll be able to get a good vantage point like this. So my approach is going to be a little different, and I'll be there on site. So hopefully I'll be able to actually talk to teams and be encouraging in person. I would love to meet those of you who watch. If you're going to be there, come talk to me, right? I would love to be able to say hi to everyone and be able to exist and see what it feels like in person, because I know this probably feels different than when you go watch HHI in person versus when you watch WAD in person. The environments, the audience, the judge structure is different, so you're naturally going to have a different feeling in it. So I'm excited to kind of vlog that up and give my own, this is what it feels like in person compared to watching on a screen, right? Just like we did with D-League. But whoa, this is the end. This is the checkpoint, end of the round 1 wide views. I am going to very soon start round 2. That's going to be on Patreon at least a day longer than this one will. So if you want to watch it, you can go over there and binge away. And these will get slowly released on the other social media platforms. But if you want it all in one go, YouTube's your best bet. I'm Jess. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Bye.